Hi and welcome to a brand new episode of the Indulge podcast with me, Roma Laishram. And today with me on my show, I've got someone I've been waiting to talk to. Thank you so much for finding time, Anita Ratnam. We finally meet and I'm so happy that I could get you onto this show. Welcome.
I am delighted.
Same here.
Thank you for persisting and I'm so happy I could make it.
Now, Anita Ratnam is well known globally and of course within the city of Chennai and all across India as a dancer, as a theatre person, but she's also someone who's very, very fond about Indian culture, as someone who's done a lot of research into Indian culture and heritage, and also is a huge handloom lover. So we're going to be talking about all of these topics. Let's not waste any time and jump right into the conversation. Let's start with the very first thing. Anita, tell me, how did you become a dancer and how long have you been dancing?
Okay, I became a dancer because my mother was not allowed to dance.
Wow.
So literally, it's like another option. So when she was growing up in her time, her father was a very strict government servant. He was in the Post and Telegraphs, and thought that Bharatanatyam was not something for girls from good families. And my mother just wanted to dance so much. And I think she made a secret vow to herself that if she had daughters, that she would definitely give them the opportunity. So I think it was because of my mother's great unfulfilled wish that I started dance. So the way I learned or got introduced to dance was not the way today's kids do it. No strict teacher, no wooden block, no sound of tak, tak, teya, te. Raji Narayan, a family friend from Madurai who then moved to Chennai, just came home as a friend, and I would run to her, very fond of her, sit on her lap. I was 3. And she would then just teach me things like, just like move her hands, and I would move my hands, and she would say put talam, and I'd put talam. Then she'd teach me a dance where it'll be layered dress, like one sleeve coming off, fun ways in which she got me to dance.
Oh, nice.
So I remember, I think from age 3, I was moving, and my mother tells me that when my parents would have dinners, I would take one of my mother's saris, put it around me, this 3-year-old, take lipstick from my mother's, smear it all over, and just sort of, photo bomb, like bomb their dinners and just move. So my mother decided I had so much movement in me and I was such a natural show-off. I was not shy of crowds. So that's it. I have to, she has to get to dance. So that's really how I got to dance. A very fun way. Like I loved it. I didn't worry about a very strict teacher. So I had my arangetram when I was about 9. And this was at my mama's wedding reception. I have to tell all of you that that was the style then, yes, during weddings, one day would be a full Carnatic kacheri, like an MS Subbalakshmi or an ML Vasantakumari. They would sing a full kacheri, and one day would be a dance performance.
How interesting.
So a lot of classical dancers performed at wedding events, and the bride and groom would sit in a sofa with the male and watch.
Wow.
So my debut or arangetram was at my mama's wedding reception. I remember so clearly, Romal, that at the end of the performance, which is about 2 hours for a 9-year-old, I was beaming and all that. And I thought my grandfather, my father's father, would come and hug me and say, "Well done, Chellam," and all. And he just sort of did this to my cheek, patted my cheek, and then turned to my mother and said, "Anita must stop dancing now, because if she continues, nobody will marry her." So I want people to understand that there was still a time in the 1960s where there was what we call in Tamil a karuppu pulli, like a little black spot for girls from prominent families to even think about dance as, a semi-professional career. How times have changed.
Absolutely.
How proud people are to say, my daughter's a dancer.
True,
or my,
true. And
my
thank
niece
God
is a
for
dancer.
that.
And thank God for that. So that's how the dance journey began. But nobody expected me to take it and seize it and make it like a life partner.
Lovely.
So that is a complete, that's a personal, I would say, a calling.
How nice. So starting off in classical dance, you then at some point in your life decided to also experiment with contemporary, and you kind of created a style which I would like to call the Anita style.
Okay.
So where has that happened, that whole journey? Where did that idea of let me go away from classical, experiment? I know it must have been tough because a lot of people would have judged you for what you did. So how did that journey happen?
So when I was about 19, 20, I was already a successful, well-known classical dancer. We didn't have the kind of social media coverage or reach that we have. We had newspapers, we had dance critics, and they would come and write and watch a dance performance. Now, when I left at age 21, I was so tired of this just next performance, every weekend a performance, then otherwise take a break for exams. I was also very interested in sports. I was playing sports for my college. So I said, is there another life? There's another way for this? So I applied, enrolled, got scholarship to a university in New Orleans, USA, but I got a scholarship to study theatre and television. Completely different. I had a choice of either going to the Martha Graham School of Contemporary Dance or to go to a university and do a master's. So my mother was very keen because nobody in the family had done more than a BA. In fact, my mother got her BA after her children were married.
Wow.
Because that's how keen we were as a family for education. So she said, no, you go do your master's. I had a wonderful time in the city of New Orleans, the city of the Mardi Gras, the city of jazz. And there I worked in television, worked in theatre, worked in film. And I realized at that point, all the various aspects there are before you step onto the stage.
Absolutely.
There is a costume department, the lighting department, there's a rehearsal director, there's a script. There's so much you have to deal with. So why isn't dance involving this? Why aren't we looking at dance, and why are we only looking at the dancing body, the classical dancing body, which is just beautiful and bejeweled, yes, and very well trained, yes, but why can't we move beyond Radha, Krishna, Rama, Sita, the grinding of the chandan, the making of the jasmine garlands, or waiting for that man to come and then saying, oh, I just don't have appetite today because he hasn't come. I thought the world was changing.
Absolutely.
Women were changing. I was changing. And I had an opportunity to work in television for 10 years in New York City. And I found so many different kinds of interests, outside dance. So when my marriage fell apart and I had my 2 young children, I had a choice. And I said, I need to come back to India. I didn't want to be part of this ethnic minority, some kind of consensus that the US was having. It's nowhere near the vibrancy and the prominence of the Indian Americans now.
Today, absolutely.
I'm talking of 1990, 32 years ago. I said, no, gut feeling, let's just go back to India. So I come back to India 12 years, 13, 14 years after I've left as a successful classical dancer. So people expect me to go back. But I just felt that ship has sailed because I had grown as an individual. I had had all the rises and crests of living in New York City, working, falling in love, falling out of love, having 2 young children to take care of. And I said somehow the repertoire, the content of what I have learned was not speaking to me. I loved the form, but I had a problem with the content.
Completely understand.
So I said, now what do I do? How do I start creating a vocabulary or a language and take what I love, but how do I transform it? How do I make my art and my life come closer together rather than separate? So how can I walk the talk? So there was that period of experimentation, which was quite long. It didn't happen overnight. So there was theatre that helped me. There was some English writing, poets, all of them, filmmakers. We were all sitting and brainstorming. They were telling me what was the problem with classical dance. It's too representational. It's too in the face. It's too... classical dancers think of themselves as too precious. There's too much of, elevating you on a pedestal.
Absolutely.
And that was not what New York City had taught me. So my style, what you call the Anita style, which I call neo-bharatam, which the word neo, it's new, of course, but I got neo after coming out of watching Keanu Reeves in The Matrix.
Ooh, nice.
The Matrix, and he's neo.
Character is neo, yep.
He's the hacker. And I said, this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be an ethical hacker from within the system and hack away, chip away at preconceived subversion by staying in it.
Absolutely.
Not stepping out of it, pointing fingers and blaming, but being within the system and slowly working.
Lovely.
And that's how it still continues.
I'm so happy it does.
Very tough. But a moment like this where you come and ask me, 30 years after I came back from New York, it means I did something right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that wonderful description. I'm in conversation with Anita Ratnam, and this is the Indulge podcast with me, Romal Laishram. Quickly going to our next question. Now, after something like Neo-Bharatam and all of that, You also came back to India and started Nartaki, which is mind-blowingly different from anything the dance world had seen at that point of time. You took a dance form that was traditional and took it to the online forum. You've created festivals, curated festivals. Tell us about that journey.
I've always loved technology.
Mm-hmm.
I've always thought that technology is a great bridge across generations for ideas. Remember, I worked in television for 10 years, and if I can reach 500 people in a dance performance, I can reach, what 1 lakh, 2 lakhs,
Absolutely, easily.
whatever, through the digital medium. So I've always believed that one needs to harness it and use it in the right way. So Nartaki began as a telephone directory in 1992, literally. So it was a telephone book, like a phone book. And it started because the Indian consulate and the Indian embassy didn't have phone numbers of prominent Indian dancers when American media wanted to go to India and do some soft stories. So literally was the time when Rajiv Gandhi was campaigning for re-election, talking of 1990, 1991. And along with the hard stories, the political stories, they were looking for soft stories on art and culture, society, lifestyle. And they thought dance. So they were going to New Delhi and they wanted the phone numbers of Yamini Krishnamurthy, Sonal Mansingh, the then fabulous dancers in their prime. Nobody had a phone number. They called the consulate, they called the embassy. No, nothing. They don't know. Then they called me because I had a television program about India. I also didn't have the phone number, but what did I do? I called my aunt. My mother's sister lives in New Delhi. I said, I want you to get the phone numbers. So there was, in those days, we don't pick up the phone and call. We book a trunk call. Operator, hello. Literally, that was it. Or we sent a fax.
Absolutely.
Anyway, turnaround time in 24 hours, telephone numbers came. They were handed over to the producers of ABC, American Broadcasting Company. And that was then. And that got me thinking.
Nice.
If the most important dancers of India are not available as a contact by our international embassies, the representations of our country abroad, why is it? Let me do it.
Nice.
So that's how the idea started. Now, how do I do it? At a time where, there were no direct phone calls and there were no mobile phones. So it was very, very slow. I had to find and appoint people in like 10 cities. And I said, get me 50 names and addresses. That's it, a slow process of gathering. And it was published in 1992 and sold out in 3 months. Okay? And then I said, it's already sold out. And then by the time we got ready for the next edition, this was a time where lots of things were changing in India. Email had started coming. We had street numbers that were changing overnight. Phone numbers went from 5 digits to 6 digits to 7 digits. I remember my house number was 42123. Then it went to 442123. Then it went to 43522123. So it kept adding digits. And I said, we can't keep publishing this and changing. So we did one more edition in 1997. And I don't know if you know, Romal, but overnight we would wake up and find our house numbers had changed. So this changed from number 20 to number 10. Like overnight, the corporation just decided to change the numbers or /10 bar something, like the most, whatever they decided to do. So we couldn't keep printing. So I said, look, we're going online.
Yes.
Online, we could just update as often. So that's how Nartaki that you recognize went online in April 2000.
Wow.
But the phone book was 1992. So you can imagine we are 30 years.
That's the legacy.
Of the brand.
Absolutely.
And we're very high up on the Google search engine because we have this enormous archive of almost 23 years.
True.
Of articles and, stories, and archival and legacy is such an important part of today's conversation of people who are change makers. So Nartaki is really, really very, very important in that sense.
Do tell me a little bit about Nartaki's most recent festivals. I remember during the lockdown, you had a fantastic festival, completely curated online. So
yes. Oh, I tell you, when the lockdown hit, just like you and me, all of India was shell-shocked. I mean, after we tried to figure out where are we going to get our milk and our bread and how we're going to get that, just our daily life going. But I was saying, what can we do if we're going to be locked down, no performances? So I made a phone call to a friend in London, I remember, and we were talking. And it was during the phone call that the idea came, because people were starting to go online, just keep, biding their time by just watching all the streaming platforms. And I said, why not reach out across the world? Because that was a moment in which the world was locked down.
True.
Maybe in different degrees, but they were locked down. And so I said, why not reach out, get to people and ask them to identify a place of lockdown, like kitchen, bathroom, sofa, dining table, balcony, elevator. We had all kinds staircases. We said, choose one place, give us 2 minutes of movement. And to make it really easy, we said, your cell phone, 2 different angles, just send us the raw footage. We'll edit it, we'll make sure. So that's how Boxed emerged. I never knew, Romal, that it would be remembered and recalled and applauded and cited in so many digital festivals, 2 years since. So that was Boxed. And then we went on to do other things like Devi Diaries, Andal's Garden. We did an all-nighter for Shivaratri, 24 hours of programming called Anidra, because traditionally you're not supposed to sleep on Shivaratri. Then we've done something recently called Epic Women. I think now there's a lot more sophistication, lot more professionalism that's coming into filmmaking as dancers are getting more adept with the camera and how to edit themselves. But I think the digital is here to stay.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to be a parallel way of connecting. Can you imagine the amount of learning that one could have done during the pandemic, reaching out to teachers and gurus from...
And I think a lot of people did it though.
Yes, oh, absolutely. And I mean, in all kinds of learning.
Absolutely.
It's not just dance, all kinds of learning. And even, life coaching, whatever, everything. So I think the digital was, in one way, the lockdown got the rise of that digital medium. It came into its presence. I mean, look at Instagram and the food revolution.
Absolutely.
My God. And I remember that you couldn't buy bread anywhere because that was the comfort food. Everybody was buying bread and, eating bread. So that was so I think that we have to look at it in many ways. Like the digital space is something that I'm now very excited with. I'm not using it nearly as much as I can, but I'm very excited with having a blue tick, whether it means something or not, because the young kids are saying, oh, wow, Anita ji, you have a blue tick. I said, yes, I do. Yes. Whatever that means. But the kind of income streams that are now possible, even for dancers.
Absolutely.
That when before we couldn't think of having an actual, life earnings.
True. Teaching online, just
teaching
unheard
online,
of.
and even collaborations on digital streams and all that. I think it's quite exciting for the younger generation.
It is. And I'm so happy that Nartaki jumped on the bandwagon a lot before anyone else.
Yeah.
I'm quickly going to ask you to talk about Andaal, but before that, I know you have a really close connection to Andaal and that's someone very important to you. But before that, you also host a festival in your hometown, Kaisikam. Tell us a little bit about that.
So my father's ancestral village is Tirukkurungudi, which is in the Tirunelveli district. It's between Tirunelveli and Kanyakumari. So Kurungudi actually means a small hamlet.
Very cute name.
Yeah, cute name. So Kurungudi. So my great-grandfather, that is T.V. Sundaramayangar, came from there. And we're very fortunate that the house is still maintained. The village is very neat and clean. There's been a lot of development there. But the cultural life of the temple and the village, nobody knew about. So in 1995, I think, somebody came to me, a theatre professor, and said, do you know there's once this amazing all-night festival tradition that's so unique to your village? I'd been going to the village with my father, and he was very, social service-minded. And at that point, the temple was filled with bat droppings. It was so badly maintained. The wells had not been dredged. So there were lots of other problems. So my father and his cousins sort of took separate responsibilities, and they were trying to do the cleaning up of that. But when this information came to me, I was in Chennai, and I remember going to my father and saying, do you know, I believe there's a tradition called kaisikam, and it's a theatre tradition. It's performed within the temple only on one day during the month of Kartige, which is between November 15th and December 15th. And it's on the 4th day of the waxing moon. So it's a fantastic script. I believe the script exists in palm leaf, and I have to find it. So there was the whole search of my father had not heard about it, not in his time. So we went and we asked the temple people. So from 1995 to 1999, it took me 4 years to find the script, which was not in the temple. It was with somebody in Madurai, dust it off, have it decoded. It was written in Tamil, but in a kind of a rounded script. So we needed ethnomusicologists. We had to have people. How do you reconstruct? You have to. It's actually a reenactment or a reconstruction.
Wow.
So the original script goes for about 4.5 hours. The idea is Jagra Vrat. Jagra Vratam is on that day, you stay up and you fast. So if you stay up and you don't eat, the mind is wandering. So how do you keep people entertained?
Lovely.
So this was a tradition that happened that one night, where you started at 10 p.m. and you finished about 2:30, 3, 4 o'clock, at which point you're ready to receive the prasad that the temple gives, breakfast,
nice.
Right? So it could be whatever it is, pongal. And there is this theatre performance. And what makes it unique is there was already in the temple a kind of a theatre hall, like a mandap, called the kaisikam mandap, which was not used. And the Lord Vishnu, which is the temple, he's known as Nambi Narayana there. So he's brought in procession, the smaller idol, not the main idol, and placed in front of the mandapam. So the performers are performing for Vishnu Nambi. Nice. The audience is incidental.
Okay.
They also can watch, but actually Vishnu Nambi is the prime chief guest. Oh, nice. Yeah. So this is a very interesting story, which also talks about caste and devotion.
Very nice.
So it talks about somebody who works in the leather business. So they call it Chandalan, and with a beautiful voice. And every year on this day, he goes and stands at the doorway of the temple because he's not allowed into the sanctum, and his soaring voice reaches the inner sanctum.
Beautiful.
Okay. So on this one day, he goes and he is fasted, right? And he can only break his fast after offering his music as devotion. So he goes, and it's through a forest, and he's stopped by Rakshas, who says, "I'm going to eat you. I've been waiting." So he says, "Of course you can eat me. My life is not of any worth, but I have to go and offer my prayers as music." So the minute I finish singing, just the experience will make the blood flow again. I'm telling you, my flesh will be even tastier for you. So the Rakshas says, "You think I'm a damn fool? That I'm going to let you slip through my hands? You're not going to come back here." So he tells him 16 different ways he convinces him about what is truth, what is giving your word mean. So it's 16 ways. Finally, the Rakshas is convinced. He goes, offers his prayers. On his way back, the Lord himself, disguised as an old man, says, "Don't be a fool and go this way. The Rakshas is waiting for you." "No, I've given my word." So the Lord is not able to convince him. He says, "Okay, may you be well." And he comes back. Now the Rakshas has heard the strains of his music. And he says, "You know what? You'll be very happy. I don't want to eat you. Give me the punya of your music.
Wow.
Give me the benefits, the phal of your music." And the devotee says, "No way. That was not the deal. The punya goes with me, and here's my body. Take it." So now another debate. "You're an idiot. I'm giving you your life. I just want you to, the punya of the music. I'm not giving even one bit." He says, I want half, I want quarter, 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, 1/64. I'm not giving anything. I'm here, my word. Now you keep your word and you eat me. So finally the Rakshas prostrates and said, "I was told to wait for a true bhakta, for a true devotee, and I think it's you, and please relieve me of this curse."
Oh, lovely.
So it is about the power of music. It is about faith. And it's told in simple Tamil with a choric refrain that today, Romal, if you come to the village, 24 years after it's been revived, people know the dialogue.
How beautiful.
And they are repeating the dialogue, and they're crying, and they're laughing, and they're clapping. I think it's just so, I just sit there and say, I'm so grateful for this opportunity,
That is just
so
beautiful.
grateful. So I've just been, I would say, the spark. But a lot of people worked with me, alongside me, sort of charged with this. So Kaisika Natakam happens once a year in the month of Kartike. I'm very proud. 24 years now.
It's happening on the 4th of December.
On the 4th of December.
Lovely. This is Romal Laishram on the Indulge podcast in conversation with Anita Ratnam. And now we quickly move to the last few questions on this podcast. Quickly, let's go into your personal connection with the Goddess Andaal. She's someone very, very important to you. You write a lot about her. Where does this connection come from?
I can't pinpoint exactly.
Mm-hmm.
All young girls, when they do a Bharatanatyam performance during my time, had to have an Andaal item.
Oh, okay.
That was a given.
Mm-hmm.
So you always did that dance piece after the Tillana.
Mm-hmm.
So the evening didn't end with the Tillana. After the Tillana, you had an Andaal item. Every girl was learning an Andaal item. And these were from her 30 songs called the Tirupave, which is part of even today's congregational worship during the month of Margazhi. So I was a dutiful girl with the little konde on the side and with a little garland and learning her songs, Margazhi, Tingal, and, just like a good student. And I think I loved the idea that, I could dress up in a kind of a pretty way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the turning point for me, where I really felt a deeper connection, was when I watched, I think it was 1968, where I watched Vaijayanti Mala as Andaal, dressed in white at the Madras Music Academy. And she did all her 30 songs, the Tirupave songs. And at the end, it said that Andaal sort of disappears or merges with the Lord. And that's what is the popular belief. And that moment where Vaijayanti Mala as a dancer, as Andaal, merged with, and the lighting effect, and then in a flash, she became this goddess. Yeah. And something happened to me, as I'm sure it happened to many people in the auditorium, but to me. And I don't even know how old I was very young. And from then, what I told my teacher was I wanted to learn to sing her songs. More than dance all her songs, I wanted to learn to sing her songs.
Mm-hmm.
So I started singing or learning to sing her 30 songs. Now, I was never told until later that Andaal had written a second book of poems called, of 143 poems, called the Nachiyar Tirumuri, Sacred Songs of the Lady, in which it's very dark, disturbing, mysterious. She's raw, tender. She wants to do self-harm. And we, good girls, to be good girls, we were never told about that. We were only told about the 30 songs. Please sing those songs. Be a good girl. Wake early like Andaal, okay? Comb your hair, okay? And, all that. So she was like this model that we were saying. Be a good girl like her, okay? Always say good things. Always wish good and do good. So this second book of poems seized my imagination. And this was also in New York when I was changing. I was asking questions about life, about marriage, about duties of a woman, the role of and I was getting ready in my mind to be a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking this girl was a teenager. She was 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. And she had this fiery imagination where she said, I dare any human being to touch me, And it's so, the clarity of her thought, her description of nature, the ease of the language where even Tamil readers can access her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't talk in terms of metaphysics. She talks in the terms of here and now.
Oh, nice.
And she talks in the terms of, I am young, I am beautiful, look at my cheeks, my lips, my eyebrows, my neck, my breast, my limbs, I'm ready for you, I'm waiting. So that kind of boldness in the 8th century,
wow,
which is very early, we tend to think of Mirabai, but then we think of Mirabai 16th century.
Yeah, much later.
Much later. And even if other people say Kashmir's Lal Ded or Maharashtra's Janabai Sakubai, they all came later. 14th, 15th, 16th centuries, right? Here was an 8th century little teenager who had this fierce feral imagination. And so I just kept reading her. Then as more translations came up, I had kept copies. It's always on my table, or there's a book when I travel. And I read the Tamil, I read the English, then I read all the other ways in which her legend sort of amplified over successive centuries. And one thing about her story, it just lends itself so beautifully to paintings, to interpretations. You know, I have a painting of Andaal in an Issey Miyake-ish gown. Okay,
Wow.
yeah.
Who was it
So,
by?
yeah, by Biswajit,
Oh, no wonder.
our Chennai artist. So she's everywhere in that sense. And now it seems that she is so, everybody's performing her, everybody's invoking her. That's a modern Andaal over there on the wall. And yes, so she's been like, I think, my shadow, my companion.
Lovely.
And I find layers whenever I look at her work. This season, I'm going to be doing something called Nachiyar Next, which is my 6th full-length production on Andaal. And I'm just discovering ways in which to retell her story.
How lovely. I'm going to keep the last question, which is relevant to the topic, which is about what you think dance is going to become in the next few years. But before that, personally for you, you've dabbled in theatre. You had a wonderful production recently, Jungle Book. When are we going to see that? But what else do you think you'd like to, kind of adventure into? Now that you've done theatre, you've done writing, you've done dance, you've also done music, and all kinds of things. So what's next for Anita Ratnam?
I think podcast.
Fabulous.
Because yes, I've been told that I'm articulate and I have a trained voice.
I think our listeners will completely agree.
So that's one. I must look at it. I must look at writing some aspects of my life, because I think my life map and the lessons I've learned
is an autobiography in the making.
I would hope to do that, but for that, I have to quieten myself. Okay. I have to stop my incessant traveling and saying yes to this, yes to this, yes to this, and really go away and step back a bit. Mm-hmm. And when you seem to have a momentum, it's really hard to get off. But I think 2024 is going to be that year. 23, 24 are going to be that year. So I think podcast. Mm-hmm. I think I'd love to do something about mature aging, wellness, and fashion.
How interesting.
Because I think everything is geared to the very young. Mm-hmm. And I think when people get 50 and over, I think some women would love to know, mm-hmm. How to live their best life.
That leads me to my next question. Wonderful segue. You're wearing a beautiful payal khandwala, but you're also a huge, huge textile enthusiast.
Oh, yes.
So where does that come from? Would you like to do more in that field? I know you keep doing Instagram lives where you're talking about these stories behind each of these weaves. So where is that journey going?
My mother and my grandmother were great fashionistas. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were very, very fashion conscious, fashion forward for their time.
Okay.
And they always insisted on beautiful fabrics, always insisted on being conscious of the weaves, mm-hmm. Supporting weavers. So I think that has come as an early imprint for me. And then because I just loved textiles, and I was on television for 10 years in New York, where I wanted to look Indian, mm-hmm. but not desi. Right?
I get the difference, absolutely.
Yeah. So I would have my mother choose saris that were, telegenic, mm-hmm. right? And I would say, don't bring very broad borders because you only see this much. I want a contrast. Give me nice primary colors. So I remember being very conscious of television color, the visual image. And I always think, if I was not in dance and performance, I might have been in fashion. Because I love looking at craft, mm-hmm. Different kinds of, accessories, costume jewelry, and how to look your best at any occasion, not being so obsessive like the airport look, mm-hmm. like people have today, but comfort, style, mm-hmm. and also to always wear something of your country's heritage. Yes. Whether it's, even if you're all black in the height of New York winter, maybe your woolen scarf can tell that story.
How nice.
So my love of textiles, I think the collection I have, and I do a pre-loved sale mm-hmm. once a year in which I really let go some things because I want other people to enjoy them. And I'm so happy that the idea of pre-loved is absolutely acceptable now. Absolutely. So I think that's wonderful. So that extension of it, I don't know if I will go and start designing, but I think I'd like to sensitize people more. Nice. So maybe I could do culture immersion trips where you could watch the weavers and also watch performance. I did one of them and it was so successful. So maybe I would like to combine performance, heritage, textiles, and retail and fun.
Lovely. That sounds like a wonderful idea. That brings me to my last question. Where do you see dance in a city like Chennai, in a country like India, in the present global scenario? Where do you see dance going?
Dance has always been a political tool. We're talking as the Tamil Sangam and Kashi is having this huge moment where artists from Tamil Nadu are going in droves to Banaras and dancing and singing and every day on the ghats. That's number one. Second, I think that dancers have to not hold on to their practice as being this precious and somehow superior to other arts kind of attitude. Because I think that when we talk creativity, we don't own that solely. We're talking of creativity now in every field.
True.
From journalism to cooking to sports to business.
Absolutely.
To technology. So the ideas bank, what you tap into is not only for classical dancers.
True. It doesn't belong to one person.
It doesn't belong to. I would like dance in a city like Chennai to become a little more outward looking.
Lovely.
Especially in the month of Margazhi, we see an overload of Bharatanatyam. I would like the audiences to be more open to other styles. And I would like to see, alongside this Margazhi festival, something that I did 20 years ago, which was the other festival, which brought contemporary dance and theatre and other allied arts forms. I'd like to see something else happen in Chennai in Margazhi, because I think we tend to believe that the entire city is one song and dance. It only resides in pockets of Alvarpet, Tenampet, Mylapore, Tinagar and Adayar.
True.
That's it. There are parts of the city.
True.
There are parts of the city that haven't heard of Margazhi.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So I just think we should go out more and access other pockets of the city and create content that keeping the vocabulary, but create content that is really of today. For instance, there's mental health issues that emerged. There is aging issues that have emerged. There's Alzheimer's, dementia. There are lots of things. The differently abled. How can we use our vocabulary to sensitize that? You know. So I would like dance to go into dance education, dance therapy, and making it more accessible. So that way we have to rethink content. And I really think, I love this city because it has allowed world-class artists to live, create their art and work.
Absolutely.
But I think there's from the city, they sort of export all over the world. Yeah, they come back. I think we need to do more for the city.
True.
And find newer audiences.
Nice. On that beautiful note, we come to the end of this conversation, but I'm not letting you go without you singing at least 4 lines from your favorite Tirupavai.
Oh. Male Manivanna Margazhi Neeraduvan. Male Manivanna Margazhi Neeraduvan. Meleya செய்வனர்கள் வேண்டுவனை கேட்டியே ஞானத்தை எல்லாம் நடுங்க முழல்வன பாலன்ன வண்ணத்துள் பாஞ்சஜல் நியமே கோல்வன சங்கங்கள் போய் பாடுடையனவே சால பெரும் பறையே பல் ஆண்டிசை பாறை கோல விளக்கே கொடிய விதானமே ஆலினிலையாய் அருளேலோ ரெம்பாவாய் ஆலினிலையாய் அருளேலோ ரெம்பாவாய்.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Dear listeners, that's been Anita Ratnam in conversation with me, Roma Laishram, on the Indulge podcast. Thank you so much for your time. And here's wishing you a brilliant new year and a wonderful Margazhi Maadham. Before we go, one recommendation that everyone should watch during this Margazhi Maadham.
If you don't do anything, come to my Nachiyar next.
When is it happening?
December 22nd at Mylapore Bharati Vidya Bhavan, 6 p.m. December 24th at T Nagar Krishnagana Sabha at 7 p.m. But watch dance. Please, there's so much happening. The whole month. Watch dance.
This has been Anita Ratnam and Romal Laishram on the Indulge podcast. Here's us saying bye.
Bye. Bye.